Hello to the Soci 210 Ether. My name's Riley, and this project is a visual sociological exploration of how capitalism shapes labor, identity, and space. I've paired my own photography with classical social theory to reflect on disconnection, surveillance, and belonging in modern life. I began studying fine art photography and human geography in Montreal and was fascinated by how images could expose structural forces. But in a moment of uncertainty, I left school and hit the road. That short trip became 2 years of driving through the US and Mexico, photographing, reflecting, and trying to understand where I fit in the world. This project continues that journey. This photo was taken at a protest in Montreal and captures resistance, identity, and the tension between state power and belonging. It sets the tone for this project's focus how individuals live within, resist, or are shaped by capitalist structures. Using the Photovoice method, I explore how capitalism affects labor, identity, and belonging. These photos aren't just aesthetic, they're analytical tools. This project draws on Marx's theory of alienation, Durkheim's concept of anomie, and Weber's view of rationalization. Each section connects theory to lived experience through images I captured while navigating my own uncertainty. So let's get into Marx. Karl Marx's theory of alienation explains how capitalism structurally disconnects workers from the act of production, the products they create, their fellow workers, and ultimately from themselves. Labor is no longer a site of creativity or fulfillment, it becomes a commodified survival mechanism shaped by market demands. Tree planting is often romanticized as free and nomadic, but in reality it reflects alienation as Marx described. Working under a piece wage system, I was paid per tree, encouraging speed, repetition, and competition over connection, sustainability, or craft. Despite contributing to the forestry industry, I remained entirely removed from the final product, unable to afford a home built with the lumber I helped generate. This is alienation from the product, labor that creates value, yet yields none of it for the laborer. In this image, I'm captured mid shift, grinning through exhaustion. It represents the paradox of labor under capitalism, the illusion of autonomy within a system that disciplines and disposes of the worker. Alienation is increasingly relevant in an age of surveillance and technology, which leads me to our next slide. The watched worker. Marx's theory of alienation extends beyond physical labor. It includes the ways in which capitalism isolates workers from autonomy and control over their own actions. This image taken outside of an Amazon parking lot captures this reality. The surveillance cameras looming over the lot symbolizes how control is embedded into the workplace, reinforcing capitalist priorities. Under such conditions, workers are alienated not only from their labor, but from decision making, self determination, and even time itself. Their work is reduced to mere metrics, productivity quotas, and algorithmic oversight. Marx argued that capitalism transforms labor into an impersonal exchange where workers function as cogs in a system designed for profit maximization. Surveillance extends this logic, ensuring that labor remains disciplined, efficient, and compliant at the cost of individual agency. Lastly, on Marx, we have alienation and the commodification of identity. When I took this photo, I was a young man traveling, searching for meaning, trying to come to terms with my own identity. Like many, I'd internalized the idea that masculinity, success, self worth, even confidence was something to be achieved rather than something inherent. Marx's concept of alienation extends beyond labor to how individuals relate to themselves under capitalism. In a system where everything can be bought and sold, even identity is commodified. Consumer culture markets prepackaged ideals of masculinity, selling us strength, success, and dominance as if they can be purchased. The image I took and chose, the graffiti, store bought masculinity, directly critiques this idea, exposing how capitalism disconnects individuals from authentic selfhood. The crack in the cement represents the fragility of these commodified identities, which often crumble under pressure. Behind it, the erect form of a bridge looms, a symbol of the rigid expectations tied to masculinity, performance, and dominance. While Marx critiqued capitalism's impact on labor, identity, and surveillance, Durkheim examined how these same forces disrupt social cohesion. As industrialization transformed life and work, he observed individuals becoming increasingly detached, not just from labor, but from shared norms and communal ties. He called this breakdown anomie, a state of normlessness where people feel unmoored and uncertain of their place in society. As we move into Durkheim's framework, we begin to see alienation not just in the workplace, but in our everyday social experiences. This image, taken at the Grand Canyon, a place often associated with awe and unity, captures a moment of fragmentation. Durkheim described anomie as a breakdown in social norms, leaving individuals unanchored and searching for meaning. Each person in this frame exists in their own world. Most are absorbed in their phones, curating their experience, while my partner, slightly out of focus, is the only one simply taking it in. Her presence felt like a quiet resistance to the normalization of mediated life. For me, this image reflects how shared spaces no longer guarantee shared experience. Durkheim warned that as society shifts away from collective rituals and norms, we experience isolation, even in communal moments. We seek connection through devices, but this often deepens our sense of disconnection. It made me think about attention as a commodity and how modern life leaves us with curated realities that rarely satisfy the deeper need for belonging. The erosion of the sacred, profane spaces in modernity. Durkheim saw the division between sacred and profane as central to social cohesion. Today, that line is increasingly blurred. The church turned brewery, in the first image, was once a sacred space of shared ritual and belief. Now it's a site of consumption and leisure. Its transformation reflects how sacred spaces are often repurposed to serve market interests. In the second image, a roadside sign reads Tame the Monster, marketing a mountain once revered for its spiritual weight. Nature, like religion, is commodified. It's all reduced to branding. Durkheim argued that rituals and sacred spaces bind us together. When they're stripped of meaning and sold back to us, we lose more than aesthetics, we lose cohesion. These images show how capitalism doesn't just consume products, but meanings, leaving individuals to find purpose alone. Lastly, for Durkheim, urban isolation and social fragmentation. Durkheim explored how modernity isolates. In cities, we exist close together but live apart. This image of a man feeding the birds reflects that tension, a small act of care set against an impersonal, disconnected backdrop. We can't assume anything about this man's story. The image evokes the feeling of urban solitude, where community doesn't always accompany proximity. Durkheim's idea of anomic suicide, rooted in normlessness and social instability, highlights how disconnection become existential. As social bonds dissolve, rituals fade, and spaces become transactional, people struggle to locate meaning. This image closes our Durkheim section and leads into Weber, whose concept of rationalization helps explain how control, efficiency, and order have come to dominate modern life, often at the expense of human connection. I understand I'm well over time, and I will hope to make this slide worth it and quick. The Iron Cage, Rationalization and Modernity. Weber argued that modern society is increasingly shaped by rationalization, where tradition and emotion give way to bureaucracy, calculation, and control. While this promotes efficiency, it comes at a cost. We become trapped in systems that prioritize order over freedom. The iron cage is Weber's metaphor for this condition, where individuals are locked into rigid structures that dictate how we work, move, and live. It's a world managed by rules, not meaning. I took this photo on a foggy railway bridge. The tracks stretching forward suggest a fixed path, efficient but inescapable. The fog mirrors the uncertainty many of us feel. We follow the system, but the destination is unclear. Raised without religion, I've often searched for meaning elsewhere, through movement, creation, and study. But in a world driven by metrics and self optimization, meaning itself can feel like a task. Weber warned us when the world becomes fully rationalized, we risk losing the very magic that makes life feel alive. Again, I appreciate you bearing with me and seeing some of my photographs, which I've worked really hard to make. We have reached the end of my presentation. The existential dread is real, but so is my appreciation for your attention. Thank you for listening.